$5 each for these old toy boxes. I heard my mother-in-law Carol's voice ring out across her front lawn. My heart stopped. I dropped the box of Christmas decorations I'd been carrying and ran toward the yard sale. My name is Alexandra Weber, and at 35, I was watching my children's inheritance being sold off like dollar store trinkets. The antique wooden boxes, carefully crafted by their late grandfather, sat on a rickety card table, bright orange yard sale stickers slapped across their polished lids. "Carol, stop." I called out, but I was too late. A collector was already walking away with Emily's box, and a young mother was counting out crumpled bills for Thomas's. My legs felt like lead as I watched pieces of my children's future disappear into strangers' cars. "Oh, Alex, don't make a fuss," Carol said, waving dismissively. "I'm just clearing out some of that clutter you insist on keeping in my attic. They're just old boxes." Just old boxes. If only she knew what those hand-carved maple chests contained. My father-in-law, James, had spent his final months preparing them before cancer took him, filling each one with carefully chosen items, documents, and letters meant for his grandchildren's future. "Those weren't yours to sell," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. "James made them specifically for Emily and Thomas." Carol rolled her eyes, adjusting her designer sunglasses. "Please, James never cared about silly keepsakes. He was a businessman. Besides, the kids have enough toys." I clenched my fists, remembering the day James had called me into his study just 2 weeks before he passed. "Alex," he said, his voice weak but his eyes sharp as ever, "I need you to protect these for the children." Carol, she wouldn't understand. "Keep them safe until they're 18. I had promised him I would, and now I was watching that promise drive away in a stranger's SUV. "Where are the other 2 boxes?" I asked, scanning the yard sale tables frantically. James had made 4, one for each milestone in the children's lives: graduation, 18th birthday, wedding day, and first child. Some gentlemen bought those earlier, paid cash, didn't even haggle," Carol said brightly, counting her money. "See, people appreciate quality items more than sentimental junk." My stomach lurched. Inside those boxes weren't just James's letters and family photographs. They held stock certificates, property deeds, and trust fund documents, James's way of ensuring his grandchildren would be taken care of long after he was gone. Carol had no idea she just sold millions in assets for $20. "Who bought them?" I demanded. "Did they leave a card? A phone number?" "Don't be dramatic, Alexandra," Carol sighed. "This is exactly why Michael left you. You're always overreacting about everything." The mention of my ex-husband, her precious son who had run off with his secretary 6 months ago, made my blood boil. But I couldn't focus on that now. I had to find those boxes. With shaking hands, I pulled out my phone and dialed James's lawyer, David Klein. He had helped prepare the contents of those boxes. Maybe he could help track them down. "David, we have a problem," I said, pacing away from Carol's satisfied smirk. "Carol sold the inheritance boxes at a yard sale." "Yes, all 4 of them." "No, she had no idea what was in them. She thought they were toy boxes." David's sharp intake of breath told me everything I needed to know. "Alex, those boxes contain more than just memories. The trust fund documentation, the property deeds. Without those papers, it'll be nearly impossible to prove James' intentions for the children's inheritance." "I know," I replied, my gaze fixed on Carol as she chatted with another customer, oblivious to the damage she'd done. "But I made a promise to James, and I intend to keep it. I'm going to find those boxes." "Start with local antique dealers and pawn shops," David advised. "I'll put out some feelers with my contacts. And Alex, don't tell Carol what was really in those boxes. Not yet. We need to handle this carefully." I hung up and turned back to the yard sale. Carol was now showing off James' old golf clubs to a potential buyer. She had never understood him, never appreciated the quiet, methodical way he planned for his family's future. To her, everything was about appearances and immediate gratification. "Those boxes meant a lot to the kids," I said, making one last attempt to reach whatever conscience she had left. "They were the last gift their grandfather made for them." Carol's expression hardened. "The kids need to learn that life isn't about holding on to the past. James spoiled them enough when he was alive. Besides," she added with a sniff, "now that Michael's gone, it's time everyone moved on, including you." I study her perfectly coiffed hair, her expensive tennis outfit, the designer purse perched on a nearby chair. She had always cared more about status than substance. James had known that. That's why he'd entrusted the boxes to me. As I walked to my car, I made a silent vow. I would find those boxes, every single one of them. Not just for their monetary value, but for the love and wisdom James had packed inside. My children would have their inheritance, both financial and emotional. And Carol? She would learn that sometimes the most valuable things come in unassuming packages. I just hoped I could track down the boxes before the buyers discovered what they actually purchased for $5 each. I glanced at my phone, 2 missed calls, one from David, one from my best friend Sarah. Time to start making calls and knocking on doors. Those boxes weren't just filled with papers and memories. They contained my children's future, and I wasn't about to let that slip away. I had work to do, and this time I wouldn't let James down. The next morning, I started my search at every antique store within a 20-mile radius. Each time I entered a shop, my heart would leap at the sight of any wooden box, only to sink when it wasn't one of James's distinctive maple creations. My phone buzzed with a text from Carol. The yard sale was such a success, using the money to join the country club's premium membership. My hands shook with anger as I read it. She had sold millions in assets and was bragging about making a few $100s. I walked into Hamilton's Antiques, the 6th store of the day, where an elderly man was polishing a brass lamp. "Excuse me," I said, pulling out my phone to show him pictures of the boxes. "Have you seen anything like these come through recently?" He adjusted his glasses, studying the photo. "Ah, beautiful craftsmanship. Maple, hand-carved. Wait." He disappeared into the back room and returned with a ledger. "A gentleman came by yesterday trying to sell one. I offered him $200, but he said he'd try his luck elsewhere." My heart raced. Did he mention where he was heading? Peterson's Pawn, I believe. Just down on Market Street. I practically ran to my car. As I drove, Sarah called with an update. "Alex, I think I found the woman who bought Emily's box. She posted it on a local buying and selling page." "Get her contact information," I said, pulling into Peterson's parking lot. "I'll call you back." The pawn shop was cramped and dusty, but my eyes immediately locked onto one of James's boxes sitting on a shelf behind the counter. The intricate maple leaf design he had carved into the lid was unmistakable. "That box," I said to the clerk, pointing. "How much?" "Just came in this morning. Guy wanted $500 for it, said it was an antique." "I'll give you $1,000, I said without hesitation. Sarah and I had pulled our savings, knowing we might need to buy the boxes back. The clerk raised his eyebrows. "Must be some box." "It belongs to my children. It was their grandfather's last gift to them." Something in my voice must have touched him because his expression softened. "Tell you what, $600, and it's yours." As he wrapped the box, my phone buzzed again. It was David. "Alex, we have a problem." One of the buyers opened their box and found the stock certificates. "They're asking questions." My stomach dropped. "How much do they want?" "They haven't named a price yet, but they know what they have." And Alex, Carol's been calling the office all morning. Apparently, someone let slip about the box's contents. I looked at the box in my hands. 1 down, 3 to go. Keep Carol distracted. I'm close to finding another one. Right on cue, Carol's number flashed on my screen. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Alexandra," she screeched. "How dare you keep this from me? Those were valuable documents. I demand you return everything immediately." "Return what, Carol?" "The boxes you sold for $5 each." I kept my voice level. "The ones you called silly keepsakes and junk. Those were meant for the family, for Michael." "No," I said firmly. "They were meant for your grandchildren." James made that very clear. He knew exactly what he was doing when he trusted them to me instead of you. "I'll sue," she threatened. "Those boxes were in my house." "Go ahead," I replied, thinking of the legal documents James had prepared, naming me as custodian of the children's inheritance. "I'm sure the lawyers would love to hear how you sold millions in assets at a yard sale." She hung up, and I took a deep breath. The day wasn't over yet. Sarah texted an address. She had found the woman who bought Emily's box. 20 minutes later, I was sitting in a cozy living room, explaining the situation to a sympathetic mother named Diana. I knew it was special when I saw it, she said, bringing the box from her daughter's room. The craftsmanship reminded me of my own father's work. I couldn't bear to see it sitting there for $5. She refused to take any money for it. Just promise those children will know how much their grandfather loved them. 2 down, 2 to go, but finding the remaining boxes would prove more challenging. The buyer who had discovered the stock certificates had hired a lawyer, and Carol was now on a warpath, telling everyone in her social circle how I had tricked her. As I drove home that evening, I thought about James's last days. He had spent hours in his workshop, carefully crafting each box, making sure every detail was perfect. Alex, he had told me, Carol means well, but she never understood the value of patience, of building something to last. Promise me you'll teach the children what really matters. My phone rang again, David with more news. The other buyer came forward. He's willing to return the box, for a price. How much? $200,000. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. That box is worth 10 times that amount. He knows. That's why he's offering us a deal. Looking at the 2 recovered boxes on my passenger seat, I felt a mix of determination and exhaustion. Carol's betrayal, though unintentional, had turned into a nightmare, but I wouldn't let her thoughtlessness destroy what James had built for his grandchildren. Set up a meeting, I told David. I'll figure something out. As I pulled into my driveway, I saw Carol's Mercedes parked out front. She was standing on my porch, arms crossed, designer handbag clutched like a shield. This confrontation had been coming. I grabbed the 2 recovered boxes and stepped out of my car, ready to face whatever came next. James had trusted me with his legacy, and I wouldn't let him down. Not now, not ever. I walked up to my porch, holding the 2 recovered boxes close. Carol's face was a mask of barely contained rage. I want everything that was in those boxes, she demanded before I could even reach for my keys. All the documents, the deeds, everything. They belong to Michael. No, Carol. They belong to Emily and Thomas, just like James intended. James wasn't thinking clearly at the end, she snapped. He was confused. Michael is his son. Everything should go to him. I unlocked my door and walked past her into the house. James knew exactly what he was doing. He spent months planning this, making sure his grandchildren would be taken care of. After everything I've done for this family, Carol followed me inside, her voice rising. I raised those children while you were busy with your career. I deserve. You deserve what? I turned to face her. The right to sell their inheritance at a yard sale, to treat their grandfather's last gift like garage sale junk. Carol flinched but quickly recovered. I'll take legal action. I'll tell everyone how you manipulated James when he was sick. Go ahead, I said, placing the boxes carefully on my dining room table. I have James's lawyer, his written instructions, and witnesses to his wishes. What do you have, Carol? A yard sale receipt for $5. Her face crumpled, and for the first time, I saw something besides anger, fear. I didn't know, she whispered. How was I supposed to know? You weren't supposed to sell things that didn't belong to you, I replied. James knew this might happen. That's why he made me promise to protect the children's inheritance. My phone buzzed, a text from David. The last buyer had agreed to meet tomorrow. 1 more box to go. What about Michael? Carol asked, sinking into a chair. His own father left him nothing. I sighed, pulling out an envelope I had been keeping safe. James left this for Michael. He asked me to give it to him when the time was right. Carol reached for it, but I held it back. It's for Michael, not you. When he's ready to face his responsibilities as a father instead of running away with his secretary, he can have it. She stood up, smoothing her expensive dress. This isn't over, Alexandra. I'll find a way to fix this. No, Carol, I said firmly. You can't fix this, but you can start respecting James's wishes and your grandchildren's future. After she left, I opened the 2 recovered boxes, checking their contents. Everything was intact. The letters, the documents, the carefully chosen keepsakes James had selected for each milestone. The next day, I met with the final buyer at David's office. He was a sharp-eyed businessman who knew exactly what he had. $200,000 is more than fair, he said, sliding the box across the conference table. Considering what's inside, I placed a certified check in front of him. Consider it a finder's fee for doing the right thing. Once he left, David helped me verify the contents of the last box. Everything's here, he confirmed. Alex, you did it. You kept your promise to James. 3 weeks later, I gathered Emily and Thomas in our living room. At 12 and 10, they were old enough to understand some of what had happened. Your grandfather made these for you, I explained, showing them the boxes. Inside are special gifts and letters he wrote, meant for different moments in your lives. He wanted you to know how much he loved you and how much he believed in your future. Can we open them now? Thomas asked, running his hand over the carved maple leaves. Not yet, I smiled. Each one is for a specific time, your graduation, your 18th birthday, your wedding day, and when you have your first child. Just like your grandfather planned. Emily hugged her box close. Grandma Carol said they were just old toy boxes. Sometimes people don't understand the value of things that can't be measured in money, I told her. Your grandfather knew that. That's why he made these boxes special, not just for what's inside them, but for what they represent. His love, his wisdom, and his hope for your future. That evening, after the children went to bed, I sat in my study reading the letter James had left for me. Dear Alex, it began, if you're reading this, it means you've kept your promise. I always knew you would. You understand, like I do, that real value isn't in things but in the love and thought behind them. Take care of my grandchildren. Help them grow into people who understand that too. I folded the letter carefully, thinking of Carol and her yard sale, of Michael and his choices, of the legacy James had entrusted to me. The boxes were safe now, waiting to share their secrets at just the right moments in my children's lives. Sometimes the most precious gifts come disguised as simple wooden boxes sold for $5 at a yard sale. But their true value lies in the love, wisdom, and hope carefully packed inside, waiting for the right moment to be discovered. James understood that. And now, thanks to him, my children would too.